What happens when a Hollywood icon known for silence and restraint walks into a studio built on opinions, interruptions, and unfiltered confrontation, and chooses not to look away? Before we go any further, subscribe to Stage View right now, hit that like button, and drop a comment below. Because stories like this don't just unfold, they erupt. The studio lights were already burning hot when Ryan Gosling stepped onto the set of The View. Not the warm, forgiving glow audiences imagine when they think of daytime television, but the kind of light that exposes everything. The faint tension in a jaw, the microseconds of hesitation before a smile forms, the truth that flickers behind practiced charm. The audience applauded on cue, a wall of sound bouncing off glossy floors and pastel backdrops. Ryan nodded, polite, controlled, his signature half-smile appearing like muscle memory rather than emotion. He waved once briefly and took his seat. Across from him sat Sunny Hostin. She was already watching him, not smiling, not nodding, just watching. Her hands rested calmly on the table, fingers interlaced, posture perfect. To anyone else, it looked like professionalism. To Ryan, it felt like a courtroom. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed him. Joy Behar cracked a joke, the kind that landed safely, predictably. Laughter rippled across the set. Ryan played along, his voice light, measured. He talked about his new film, the months of preparation, the emotional weight of the role. He said all the right things. He always did. But Sunny hadn't spoken yet. And Ryan knew enough about interviews to know that silence, real silence, is never accidental. As the conversation drifted, the audience relaxed. Cameras glided smoothly. Producers behind the scenes exhaled. This was going well. Too well. Sunny finally leaned forward, just slightly, and the movement alone shifted the temperature of the room. "Ryan," she said, her voice calm but sharpened by intent. "Your film touches on masculinity, power, and accountability. Some critics say it romanticizes behavior that many people, especially women, find troubling." The applause didn't come this time. Ryan turned toward her, still smiling, but something in his eyes dimmed. He'd answered questions like this before. He had rehearsed answers, media-trained responses polished to a sheen. But Sunny wasn't asking like a journalist hunting for a quote. She was asking like someone who had already reached a verdict. "I don't see it that way," Ryan said. "I think the film invites conversation rather than answers." Sunny tilted her head. "But conversation implies responsibility. And you've been very careful, historically, about avoiding direct stances." There it was. The smile faded, not dramatically, not all at once. It simply stopped. Ryan's face settled into something colder, heavier. He didn't blink. He didn't interrupt. He just stared at her. The audience shifted in their seats. Joy glanced at Whoopi. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. The producers leaned closer to their monitors. Sunny didn't look away. "Do you believe," she continued, "that public figures have an obligation to speak clearly when their work influences social behavior?" Ryan inhaled slowly. The microphones picked it up. A quiet, deliberate breath. He placed his hands flat on the table, fingers spread, grounding himself, or preparing. "I believe," he said, voice lower now, "that art isn't a courtroom." Sunny's lips pressed together for half a second. "But people are judging real consequences." That was when it happened. Ryan didn't respond right away. He didn't deflect. He didn't joke. He didn't soften. He just looked at her. Directly. Unflinchingly. A stare so still it felt deliberate, almost confrontational. Not anger. Not arrogance. Something else. Something unresolved. Social media would later call it a cold stare. Others would call it silent fury. In the studio, it felt like time slowed down. Sunny held his gaze, but the shift was undeniable. Her voice, when she spoke again, carried an edge. "Are you uncomfortable with the question?" "No," Ryan said. "I'm uncomfortable with the assumption behind it." A murmur rolled through the audience. One person gasped softly. Someone else whispered, "Oh." Whoopi leaned in. "All right, let's." Sunny raised a hand, politely but firmly. "No, I'd like to finish." Ryan didn't object. He didn't move. The stare remained unwavering, like a challenge issued without words. "You've said before," Sunny continued, "that you prefer privacy, that silence is a choice. But silence, in moments of cultural reckoning, can feel loud." Ryan finally blinked. Once. Slowly. "Silence," he said, "can also be respect. Not everything needs to be declared to be understood." Sunny shook her head slightly. "That sounds convenient." The word hung in the air like smoke. Ryan's jaw tightened. The cameras caught it. The internet would replay it in slow motion hours later. He leaned back in his chair, finally breaking eye contact, but only for a moment. When he looked back at her, the warmth was gone completely. "I didn't come here to be cross-examined," he said. Sunny didn't flinch. "You came to promote a film that benefits from public discourse." "And I'm engaging," Ryan replied, "but not on terms that frame me as irresponsible for choosing nuance." The audience erupted, not applause, not boos, but a chaotic mix of reactions. Some clapped. Some murmured disapproval. A few shook their heads. The producers were now visibly panicking, whispering urgently into headsets. Joy attempted to lighten the mood. "Well, this is getting spicy before noon." But the moment had slipped beyond control. Sunny leaned back, folding her arms. Nuance shouldn't be a shield. Ryan's eyes flicked to her arms, then back to her face. The stare returned, colder now, sharper. Not hostile, but unmistakably firm. "An accusation shouldn't be a shortcut," he said. Silence. Real silence this time. No music. No laughter. No clapping sign. Just the hum of studio equipment and the collective awareness that something had cracked open. Whoopi cleared her throat. "We're going to take a quick break." The words felt abrupt, almost desperate. As the cameras pulled back and the lights dimmed slightly, Ryan remained seated, hands clasped now, staring at the table. Sunny looked straight ahead, her expression unreadable. No one spoke to each other. Not yet. In living rooms across the country, viewers leaned closer to their screens. Phones were already in hands. Clips were being recorded. Tweets drafted. Opinions forming in real time. No one knew how far this moment would travel. But everyone could feel it. And the break had only just begun. The red light above the main camera clicked off, but the tension didn't follow it into silence. If anything, it thickened, settling into the space between the chairs like fog that refused to lift. Crew members moved faster now, quieter, eyes darting between Ryan and Sunny as if they were standing between two exposed wires that might spark at any second. Ryan hadn't moved. His shoulders were still squared, posture composed, but the stillness no longer read as calm. It read as restraint. The kind that takes effort. The kind that can snap. Sunny adjusted the papers in front of her, aligning them with unnecessary precision. A producer leaned in toward her, whispering something urgent. She nodded once, curtly, without taking her eyes off the tabletop. Whoopi exhaled audibly. "All right," she muttered, half to herself, half to the room. Everybody breathed. Ryan finally looked up, not at Sunny, but toward the studio floor manager. His expression was neutral again, professionally sealed. But whatever had passed between him and Sunny hadn't dissolved. It had merely gone underground. The countdown began. 5 fingers. 4. 3. As the cameras came back live, applause erupted again, louder than before, forced, frantic, the sound of a show trying to reassure itself that everything was still normal. Whoopi smiled wide. "And we're back," she said, voice bright, practiced. "We're talking with Ryan Gosling about his latest film and the conversations it's sparking." Ryan nodded politely. Sunny turned slightly in her chair, angling herself toward him again. The movement was subtle, but intentional. This wasn't over. Whoopi attempted to redirect. "Ryan, the film has also been praised for its performances." "I think," Sunny interjected smoothly, "the conversations around the film are just as important as the performances." Ryan turned to her slowly. The audience felt it. A ripple of anticipation passed through them, the kind that precedes impact. Sunny continued, "You've said art isn't a courtroom. But when art enters the public sphere, it doesn't stay neutral. It shapes narratives." Ryan smiled faintly. "Not warmth. Not charm. Something sharper. So does commentary." A few audience members murmured. One clapped, then stopped when no one joined. Sunny's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "Are you suggesting my question is commentary rather than concern?" "I'm suggesting," Ryan replied evenly, "that intent matters." Sunny leaned forward again. "My intent is accountability." Ryan leaned forward too, mirroring her without realizing, or perhaps realizing perfectly. "And mine," he said, "is honesty." The air between them felt charged now, like a standoff neither side wanted to abandon. "You've been called," Sunny said, "a symbol of quiet masculinity. Some people admire that. Others see it as avoidance." Ryan's jaw flexed. "Labels are easy. But responsibility isn't," Sunny shot back. Joy shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. Okay, before we all." Ryan raised a hand, gently but decisively. Joy fell silent. I want to answer, he said, but not the version of the question that assumes guilt. Sunny's lips parted slightly, surprised. Not offended, alert. Go on, she said. Ryan took a breath. This one was deeper. The kind you take before saying something you hadn't planned to. I grew up watching people speak loudly and do nothing, he said. I also watched people say very little and change lives quietly. I don't believe volume equals virtue. The audience listened now. Fully. No murmurs. No whispers. Sunny nodded slowly. That's fair. But silence from influential men has historically protected harm. Ryan met her gaze again. The stare returned, but this time it carried something else. Not cold. Focused. Intent. And noise, he said, has historically drowned out nuance. A sharp intake of breath came from somewhere in the crowd. Sunny didn't back down. Nuance doesn't absolve impact. No, Ryan agreed. But accusation doesn't create understanding. For a split second, neither spoke. Then Sunny asked, softly but firmly, Do you think you're above criticism? Ryan blinked. The question landed hard. Not because it was unfair, but because it was direct. No, he said. I think I'm human. The simplicity of the answer shifted something. Even Whoopi glanced at him, surprised. Sunny sat back, studying him now. Not attacking. Assessing. Then why? She asked. Does this feel like resistance instead of reflection? Ryan hesitated, just long enough for the audience to feel it. Because, he said slowly, reflection requires trust. Sunny tilted her head. And you don't trust the question? I don't trust the framing, Ryan replied. I don't trust conversations that begin with a verdict. The studio went quiet again. Even the cameras seemed to linger longer than usual, zooming in on expressions, on the tight line of Sunny's mouth, on the tension in Ryan's shoulders. Whoopi cleared her throat. This is actually an important discussion. Sunny nodded. It is, which is why I'm having it. Ryan nodded too. So am I. For the first time, there was no interruption. No overlap. Just two people speaking from opposite ends of the same fire. Sunny glanced briefly toward the audience. Many viewers at home, she said, are tired of powerful men choosing ambiguity when clarity is needed. Ryan followed her glance, then looked back at her. Many viewers, he replied, are tired of being told that only one kind of response is valid. A woman in the front row whispered, Wow. Another shook her head, visibly emotional. Sunny exhaled. The fight in her shoulders softened, not gone, but recalibrated. Do you understand, she asked, why your stare earlier felt dismissive to some people? Ryan paused. The room leaned in. I understand, he said, why it could be read that way. Sunny waited. It wasn't dismissal, he continued. It was me choosing not to interrupt you, not to perform, not to react for the camera. Sunny considered that. For a moment, the lawyer in her gave way to the human. And you thought silence would speak for you, she said. I thought, Ryan replied, it would let you finish. The audience reacted this time, soft applause, scattered but sincere. Sunny nodded slowly. That's not how it landed. I know, Ryan said quietly. Something shifted again. Not resolution, but recognition. Whoopi seized the opening. All right. I think this is one of those moments where intention and impact collide. Ryan smiled faintly, grateful for the lifeline. Sunny folded her hands together. I appreciate you engaging, she said, even when it's uncomfortable. Ryan met her gaze. The stare was gone now, replaced with something steadier. I do too, he said, even when it's hard. The tension didn't vanish, but it transformed. From confrontation into something more fragile, more complicated. The segment wrapped soon after, applause rolling through the studio again, this time less forced. As the cameras pulled away, Ryan stood, thanking the hosts politely. Sunny nodded at him, professional, composed. But as he turned to leave, Sunny spoke again, off mic, low enough that only those closest could hear. Next time, she said, don't underestimate how silence reads. Ryan paused. Looked back at her. Next time, he replied just as quietly, don't underestimate why someone chooses it. They held each other's gaze for one final beat. Then Ryan walked off the set. And the world was about to decide whose version of that moment would win. By the time Ryan Gosling reached the narrow hallway behind the set, the quiet felt unnatural. The kind of quiet that exists only in places where noise has been forcefully contained. Crew members pretended to be busy, eyes glued to clipboards, cables, Anything except the man walking past them with his jacket draped over one arm and his expression locked somewhere between calm and exhaustion. A publicist fell into step beside him. "You handled that well," she said quickly, as if speed might outrun the consequences. Ryan didn't answer. Inside the control room, producers were already replaying the footage. Not the full segment, just the stare, the pause, the breath before the reply. Someone scrubbed the clip back and forth, frame by frame. "Freeze it there," a producer said. On the screen, Ryan's eyes were fixed on Sunny. Still, unblinking. To some, it looked defiant. To others, wounded. To everyone, it looked intentional. "That's the moment," someone whispered. Out on the stage, Sunny remained seated long after the cameras shut down. Joy leaned toward her. "You okay?" Sunny nodded, but her eyes were distant. "I'm fine." Whoopi studied her for a second longer. "That got real." Sunny exhaled. It was always real. Her phone vibrated against the table. She didn't need to look to know what it was. She picked it up anyway. Messages were already pouring in. Producers. Friends. Colleagues. And then the notifications, dozens of them, tweets, tags, clips already circulating. The algorithm had chosen its moment. Back in his car, Ryan stared out the window as Manhattan blurred past. His phone buzzed nonstop in his pocket. He didn't check it. Not yet. He knew better. He'd learned the rhythm of backlash long ago. The way it builds whether you watch it or not. But even he couldn't ignore it forever. When he finally glanced down, the screen was lit with headlines forming in real time. Ryan Gosling's chilling stare shocks view audience. Sunny Hostin presses Gosling. Actor goes silent. Awkward moment on live TV leaves fans divided. Ryan locked the phone and leaned his head back against the seat. Silence again. Except this time, it wasn't his choice. Across the city, Sunny sat in her office, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. Her phone lay face down on the desk, vibrating like a live thing trying to escape. She stared at it, jaw tight. Her producer knocked lightly. "You've got support," he said. "A lot of it." She nodded. "I know. And criticism," he added. Sunny smiled thinly. "Of course." She picked up the phone now, scrolling through the flood. Some praised her for holding a powerful man accountable. Others accused her of ambushing him. Some called Ryan brave. Others called him cold, arrogant, dismissive. The internet had already split the moment into teams. Ryan's stare became a meme within an hour. Slow-motion edits. Dramatic music layered underneath. Captions arguing opposite truths using the same image. He said everything without saying a word. He refused to answer when challenged. He was respectful. He was condescending. Sunny watched one clip loop again and again. She focused on his eyes, not the expression people projected onto them, but the stillness. The restraint. She exhaled slowly. "He wasn't wrong," she murmured to herself. "But neither was I." Meanwhile, Ryan sat in a hotel room that felt too big, too quiet. His publicist paced near the window, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, we're aware," she said. "Yes, we'll issue something later." Ryan interrupted softly. "No statement." She turned. "Ryan." "No statement," he repeated. "Not yet." She hesitated. "They're calling it a cold stare." Ryan smiled faintly. "Of course they are." He stood and walked to the mirror. Studied his own reflection. The same face that had played heroes, lovers, outsiders. The same eyes now being dissected by millions who had never met him. He remembered Sunny's question. The way it had landed. The way it had assumed something he'd spent years trying not to become. Above criticism. He shook his head. "I'm not above it," he said quietly. "I'm inside it." Across the country, talk shows picked up the clip. Panelists argued over body language. Experts were invited on to decode the stare. See the jaw tension? That's discomfort. That's defiance. That's restraint. Sunny appeared on a late-night panel, calm, composed. "I wasn't trying to provoke him," she said. "I was trying to engage." "And do you think he engaged?" the host asked. Sunny paused. "I think he did, in his own way." That answer surprised people. Ryan, meanwhile, declined every follow-up interview request. The absence became its own statement. Fans defended him fiercely. Critics sharpened their knives. Hashtags trended, vanished, then resurfaced with new angles. Hashtag cold stare, hashtag let him speak, hashtag accountability matters. Each side certain they'd seen the truth. Late that night, Sunny scrolled through one last clip. This one unedited. No music. No captions. Just the raw exchange. She watched her own face as she spoke. the conviction, the pressure. Then she watched Ryan. The pause, the breath, the stare. She didn't flinch. But she didn't look away either. On the other side of the city, Ryan lay awake, phone face down on the nightstand. He thought about the audience. The gasp. The silence that followed his words. He thought about Sunny's final comment off mic. Don't underestimate how silence reads. He closed his eyes. The moment was no longer theirs. It belonged to everyone now. And the world wasn't done with it yet. By morning, the moment had hardened into something permanent. It was no longer a clip. It was a reference point. Morning shows opened with it. News tickers flashed variations of the same question. Was Ryan Gosling silenced? Or was he sending a message? Panels argued. Commentators raised voices. Screens split between Sunny Hostin's poised expression and Ryan Gosling's unblinking stare, frozen like a photograph taken just before an explosion. In coffee shops, people leaned over tables replaying the clip on their phones. In offices, it played silently in the background while coworkers debated meaning without sound. On social media, strangers argued as if they'd been in the room themselves. Some called it bravery. Some called it arrogance. Some called it restraint. Some called it evasion. The audience had become the jury. Sunny arrived at the studio the next day earlier than usual. The building felt different now, charged, watchful. Staff greeted her carefully, as if unsure which version of her they were meeting. The advocate, the agitator, the woman who had stared down a Hollywood icon without blinking. She sat at the table again, makeup lights glowing, papers neatly stacked. When the cameras went live, she spoke first. Yesterday's conversation sparked a lot of reaction, she said evenly. That's what happens when difficult questions meet public figures. She didn't apologize. She didn't escalate. She clarified. Accountability doesn't require hostility, she added. But it does require engagement. Some applauded. Others scoffed. The divide deepened. Across the country, Ryan watched none of it. He went for a walk instead. No hat. No sunglasses. Just a man moving through a city that knew his face but not his thoughts. A few people recognized him. Some smiled. Some stared. One person whispered, "That was intense." Ryan nodded politely and kept walking. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel attacked. He felt exposed. For the first time in a long while, he understood something clearly. Silence could protect you, but it could also be interpreted for you. And once interpretation takes over, intent becomes irrelevant. By afternoon, an unexpected thing happened. Sunny posted. No clip. No headline. Just words. Conversations are messy. Truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it stares back at you. The internet exploded again, but differently this time. Ryan saw the post hours later. He read it twice, then a third time. He didn't respond publicly. But that night, his team released a single line, carefully chosen, almost fragile in its simplicity. Dialogue matters. So does listening. Nothing more. No defense. No counterattack. No explanation. The outrage cycle slowed. Not stopped, but softened. People moved on to the next firestorm, the next scandal, the next viral confrontation. But this one lingered, because it hadn't been resolved. Months later, the clip still surfaced in compilations titled Moments That Changed Daytime TV or Celebrities Who Didn't Flinch. Media students analyzed it. Body language experts debated it. Viewers argued in comment sections long after the trend had passed. And every time it resurfaced, the same question followed. What really happened in that moment? Was it a challenge? A misunderstanding? A quiet refusal to perform? Or a missed opportunity to speak louder when it mattered? The truth sat somewhere uncomfortable, between intention and impact, between silence and responsibility. Ryan and Sunny never spoke publicly about it again. They didn't need to. The moment had already spoken for them. And now it speaks to you. So tell us, what did you see in that stare? Strength? Discomfort? Respect? Defiance? Drop your opinion in the comments below. Share this story with someone who sees the world differently than you do. And subscribe to Stage View for more explosive, cinematic moments where celebrity, power, and truth collide. Because sometimes the loudest moments happen when no one says a word.